TypeScript is JavaScript with a syntax for types. TypeScript is being adopted by more and more people, and that for a good reason. The static typing catches bugs early, the self-documenting nature, and many more things. And this quick learning lesson, we are trying to learn the basics of TypeScript. Before we dive into the details, let's quickly understand what TypeScript is. TypeScript is a statically typed superset of JavaScript that compiles to plain JavaScript. What does that mean? Well, it allows you to catch errors during development, improves coding maintainability, and brings a structured approach to your JavaScript development. In this tutorial, we're going to use the bun runtime because of its ease of use and the overall fact how it interacts with TypeScript. You can also follow along by using Dino or Node.js. You can download the install script from bun by calling this command. After you've installed the bun runtime, the bun command should work. You can create a new project with first creating a new directory. In my case, I will call it test. And going into that directory with cd and creating a new project with the bun init command. Now we choose a package name, so the name of our project, and an entry point. I would just use index.ts. This is the file where our program begins. And now we can open our project in our favorite code editor. So after you've opened up the project in your favorite code editor, we can get started. There are many different files in it. There's the tsconfig file that is storing the TypeScript compiler options, a basic readme file, a package.json file where your installed packages are stored, an index.ts file where the program begins, a bun logb file, and a gitignore file. We can pretty much ignore all of the files except the index.ts file, because there we're writing our code. So the first line says console log hello via bun. This just prints hello world to the console. We can test this by running bun run index.ts. And like we can see, hello via bun is printed to the console. So let's go down to coding. First, we're going to delete the console logger. Initiate a new variable with the let keyword, followed by its name, followed by a data type, followed by an equals, and followed by the data you want to assign to a variable, in this case, hello world. You can also initiate variables with the const keyword. The const keyword just says this value can only be assigned once at the beginning and nowhere else. And the var keyword can also be used to initiate new variables. There are some slight differences between the let and var keyword, and that is that the let keyword is block scoped and the var keyword is function scoped. So let me show you a quick example. The var keyword in this case can be used outside of the block in the console log line, but the let keyword doesn't work like that because it's block scoped, so it can only be used in these curly braces. So now let's learn about functions. Functions are initiated with the function keyword. After that, you can specify a name for your function. In this case, we just call it test. Then you can specify a parameter. In this case, I will call the first parameter x and then a type for the parameter. In this case, I will just use number. You can also specify a return type for this function. In this case, I will just use number. Then we can do something in the function. In this case, I will just return x plus 1. And that's how basically functions work. If you don't specify a return type in the function, it will auto-infer the type that you give. So if you remove number, now the data type of the test function is still number. If you want to call a function, you can just name the function, specify a parameter, and run it. In this case, nothing happens because we didn't print anything into the console. So let's do this quickly. Console log test 5, and now we should see 6 because we add 1 to 5, and that's 6. That's basically how functions work in TypeScript. So let's talk about if statements. If statements are written with the if keyword. After that, some brackets, and then the statement that you would put into them. If the statement is true, the code will be executed. So let's take the example. If the temperature is above 24 degrees, we will say console log this day is hot. And if we now execute the code, you can see this day is hot. There is also the else if block and the else block. If the condition of the if block is not met, then the else if block is seen to, and if that's also not met, the else block will be executed. So now let's talk about objects. Objects are a way to store your complex structures in key value pairs. So let's take the example human, and in this example the human has the name John. So we just state the name of the object and the key, name, and the value John. And of course we can give our human more values like an age, and this can be a different data type, of course, like 23. And now if we want to index our human, we can just state human.name, and if we print that to the console, we can see that we get John. You can also assign new values to the properties of your object by calling human.name, giving it a new name. Let's call it Lee. And now console logging this should result in Lee. For and while loops pretty much work like in every other language. Let's take the while loop for example. The while loop has like the if statement and the condition. If this condition is true, then the while loop will be executed, and if not, the while loop will be skipped. So let's create a variable I0. So let's make the condition while I is less than 5, console log I, and every time you do that, we increment I by 1. So now let's execute that code. This should result in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The for loop pretty much works like in every other programming language. We create a variable called I in this case, then we state a stopping condition if I is less than 5, and then we state what we want to do with the I, increment, decrement, or do whatever. And then we can do the same like before, console log I, and this should result in the same solution. Yeah, like we can see the while loop and the for loop are exactly the same. So now let's talk about the type keyword. We can use the type keyword to create complex structures. So let's write the type keyword. Let's give the type name, in this case human. The types are always capitalized, and then we can define our structures. In this case we give the human a name, an age, and after we stated the property, so name should be of type string, age should be of type number. So after that we can give our variables the type human, and then the variables have to adhere to the type of human. In this case, the name must be a string and the age must be a number. We can also use the type keyword in conjunction with union types. In this example, the animal has either to be a cat or a dog, or the result has either to be a string or a number. The interface is another pretty important keyword in TypeScript. It is very similar to the type keyword. In this example, we take another human, then we give the human a name, it's again string, and an age, that's number. After that, we can create the human with the same properties than before, name of John and an age of 23. So this looks pretty much like the type keyword. So what's the difference? So if you give two interfaces the same name in the same file, they merge together and create one interface. In this case, the variable myHuman has to fulfill all two human interfaces. So it has to have a name, an age, and a last name. So another big difference between an interface and type is that this line of code would not be allowed in an interface, but in a type. You can't just assign a type to an interface, but this would be valid doing this with a type. So let's get started with classes. you initiate a new class with the class keyword and giving your class a name. Let's call it again human, and then putting everything in curly braces. Then you can give your class some properties. Let's give it a name, and that will be pretty much everything. So now let's create a constructor that is executed when the human class is initialized with the parameters of name string, and then you can assign the name of this class to the name of the parameter that is passed in. After that, we can also create some functions. In this case, I created hello world that just returns hello world. And after that, we can create the variable myHuman with the class we just created. So we need to call the new keyword. So we create a new object of this class. Then we call our class, and then we pass in the parameters, in this case, John. And then we have it, our own object of our class. So after that, we can execute a hello world method by calling myHuman hello world in the console log, saving the file and executing it. And here you see hello world is being executed into the console. And that's how simple classes are.